You're now listening to The Pick is In. The Pick is In Fantasy Football Podcast. And now your host, Matt Kelley.
Welcome to The Pick is In Fantasy Football Podcast. I am indeed your host, Matt Kelley, and today on the show I'm going to be talking with Kevin O'Malley of DynastyProsFootball.com about ways to improve your redraft league and make things more interesting in those home league draft leagues that you're in every year. Kevin and I both have Dynasty content over at DynastyProsFootball.com, but like I said, today we're going to flip that switch and just talk about redraft leagues. Right before I bring Kevin in here, just want to remind you that you can head over to Twitter and follow the show at The Pick is In FFP. So now I'm going to bring in my buddy Kevin. What's going on, man? How's it going?
Oh, it's going pretty good, man. Football season, we're getting closer, slowly but surely. So yeah, really looking forward to diving into just how to make your league a little more interesting. We all kind of go through the same process every year, whether we're in Dynasty or Redraft. So just something, make it a little more fun, spice it up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm in a league with one of my good buddies who I do the show with occasionally, Travis. And I've been in a league with him for probably, it's got to be like 7 or 8 years going on now. But it's with a bunch of his family and friends, and they've had this league for upwards of I'm not even kidding, it's like 25 years that this league has been going. And I got into it like 7 or 8 years ago, and they had somebody leave. But it's very, very old school standard. I think the first year I had it, they had position minimums and things like that. And I was eventually like, guys, we gotta do a little shift work here and kind of bring the game up to date just a little bit. So that's definitely what we're going to be hoping to give you guys some ideas of what to do for these home leagues and how to make them better. And one of the first things when I get asked to join a league, one of my first questions is well, how do the waivers process? And I think that's the first thing we're going to jump into here is there's that old school way of just doing waivers, picking guys up out of the free agency pool by your standings and the inverse of your standings, and that's just the very old school way that it's been done. But more recently, a lot of leagues have switched to free agency acquisition budget. You'll often hear it referred to as FAB. That's definitely my preferred method. Everybody gets $100 at the beginning of the season. Spend it as much or as little as you like on guys that are in the free agency pool, and I think it just makes it a little bit more fair. Everybody has a chance to go out and get their guys out there in free agency.
Yeah, so I understand why people do normal waiver wires, right? You want to get the bad teams better, blah blah blah. But I think you're right. It's almost like you're rewarding the bad teams for being bad, but you win week 1, and then say whatever, Zeke goes down and Pollard wasn't drafted, and you have Pollard sitting there. Well, the last place team's just gonna get him. So I'm all for spicing it up. Let somebody go, throw out $80, go get him. Yeah, it just seems to be the better way to go. You can impose a little bit more strategy, and it makes you care a little bit more about the whole waiver period. Because, if you win week 1 and somebody, like I said, somebody really good becomes available, you don't have to worry about getting them, so who cares?
Right, and that's, I don't mind it. If I know what the waivers are going in, totally fine, and I'll just accept it for what it is. But I think some of the hardships, at least for me, in some of these leagues where people have trouble keeping interest all season long, once they're out of the playoff hunt, sometimes they stop putting in waiver claims. And so what then happens, with not putting in waiver claims, it's going to start falling. Guys are going to start falling to your opponents that are, doing pretty well. And let's say you're in first. You just absolutely almost have no chance of getting anyone worthwhile off of waivers. So having that FAB budget in there just makes it a little bit more even, a little bit more competitive, and gives that little extra bit of strategy for you throughout the season. And the next thing I want to hit on is the thing that you were talking about with myself last night, and you said that you like to have the ability to trade draft picks in the middle of the draft or before the draft even starts.
Yeah, so for me, this would be a big one. And outside of dynasty leagues where you can pretty much do whatever you want to, in redraft leagues, you're just not allowed to do it. I've never been a part of a redraft league where they allowed you to trade draft picks. So, my biggest example was last year. I split me and one of my family members, we split a $500 team. It was my biggest buy-in for fantasy football to date, and we ended up with the number one pick. And I've been a McCaffrey fan forever. Clear, obvious choice. He wanted Saquon. So, we're going back and forth, and neither one of us would budge. So, I put it out there to the league. I said, all right, who wants the first pick? Let's make a trade. And, right away it got shot down. Not allowed to do it. Can't do it. So, we ended up swapping back to 7 instead of trading, getting multiple draft picks for it. We ended up swapping back to 7. It was
not quite the same, though.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah.
Instead of picking up, an extra second or third round draft pick or, something crazy from McCaffrey.
Right.
We swapped back to 7. I think we picked like Le'Veon Bell, and we came in dead last in that league. So it was bad.
Oh, the Adam Gase effect. It never fails. But, yeah, no, I mean, and you and I both over at DynastyProsFootball.com, we're all concentrated on Dynasty. And obviously, anytime you do a startup for Dynasty, draft pick trading is going to happen in every single startup. It never fails. And then if you do the rookie draft separately, it seems to only further the fire there for getting people to trade. And so I love that strategy. And to your point, I've never really been a part of a redraft that encourages trading often. Anytime I do a redraft, there's a 60-second clock, maybe a 90-second clock. I think the longest clock I've ever had in redraft is maybe 2 minutes. And it's hard to strategize trading picks when there's that small window of a time. So if you have the opportunity to set up a live draft and you can keep things moving at a fairly decent pace, you don't want guys taking 20, 30 minutes to make a pick by any stretch, but if you can give yourself that extra window of time and trade draft picks, I think that's an awesome way to spice things up there for your redraft league and get everybody involved literally at the start, at the precipice of your league. So I think another thing, we tend to jump into these leagues that stay the same, over time. Just like I was saying with my buddy Travis, his league that he's in and that I'm in now, it's been roughly the same for 20, 25 years. And one of the types of leagues that is picking up is either 2 quarterback leagues or super flex leagues versus just starting the 1 quarterback. So the large part of the argument there is quarterback is the most important position in football. I don't think anybody's really going to argue that too hard. And so why not make it more important in fantasy football as well? So often you can wait forever to draft a quarterback, or you can just stream them off the waiver wire and be perfectly fine. In a 2 quarterback league or a super flex league, way harder, almost impossible, in fact, to do that. So, do you like the 1 QB? Do you like super flex? Do you like 2 QB? What's kind of your preference there?
So for me, I've been pretty traditional, as I was telling you right before the podcast started, right before we started the show. But I agree. Even just listening to you sell it there a little bit, I'm kind of buying it. You're right, these NFL teams, I mean, the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl with Mahomes. He was by far the best player in the league. So, if the quarterback position is that important in the real game, I do kind of agree. It should be more important in fantasy football. It should kind of, try to equate to the actual NFL. So, for me, like you said, right now, I'm already in 2 leagues. I drafted a quarterback my last pick. I mean, there's like 15 quarterbacks this year that are kind of all maybe in that average, above average spot. So, if you had a bigger, if they got more points, or if it was a super flex, if you had to go 2 quarterbacks, it becomes, much more important. You don't want to take 2 lower end quarterbacks. You're going to lose every week.
Right. You don't want to be waiting for the Mitch Trubisky's of the world to figure out if they're even going to be starting that week. You want to make sure you got those 2 high-end quarterbacks. Obviously, quarterbacks put out the most, generally speaking anyway, put out the most fantasy points every season. So to have 2 high-end guys in a 2 quarterback or a super flex league then becomes a more important strategy. And again, avoiding guys like Mitch Trubisky and not having to take chances on guys like Gardner Minshew and things like that. So 2 quarterback, super flex, it's becoming a little bit more of the norm. I'm starting to see it pushed a little bit. Would love to get into some more myself. Now, a hot button issue, I'm just going to tell you now, folks. This one bothers people. Either people really like it or people really, really hate it. And I think the people that hate it are also the people that already hate being in PPR and hate the argument that a guy gets a point for even getting a catch. And I'm talking about tight end premium leagues. We're going to do a show here in a couple of days with some other guys over at DynastyProsFootball.com. We jumped into a Dynasty Startup League that is a tight end premium, and tight ends get 2 points for every catch, trying to bump up the value of tight ends. Obviously, the tight end position has been not the best over the last couple of years. It's been a bit of a dumpster dive to find guys on a weekly basis unless you're taking those really high-end guys. So what side of the line do you fall in with tight end premium?
So let me tell you, I love this idea. I like this more than the super flex, the 2 quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. This is my favorite idea because, next to quarterbacks, offensively, the second most important position on the field is tight end, in my opinion. Just look at the 2 teams who were in the Super Bowl last year.
Sure.
They were the 2 best tight ends in football.
Absolutely.
It correlates every year. The Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017 with Ertz. The Patriots, the tight ends have been slacking, lately. But you
obviously
can just
the
tell,
Gronk years,
as the season, right? And Gronk was a major factor in all of those Super Bowls, along with Brady and Belichick, of course.
Sure.
But when you look at the last 3 or 4 seasons and how the years ended, the last 4 teams have all had really good tight ends almost every year, outside of the Patriots that one year when Gronk was kind of hurt, but Gronk is still Gronk. So for me, I think I love this idea. Give the tight ends more points, make their ceiling a little bit higher, because tight ends and quarterbacks, it's kind of the same thing. You don't,
right.
You're either taking
the high-end guys or you're waiting forever. Yeah.
Right. Or, you're going to wait till the last round and hope that, a Hurst or a Jarwin or somebody like that can really perform this year.
Yeah, and it does happen from time to time. Obviously, we had Mark Andrews last year who emerged. We had Darren Waller last year who emerged. But the thing is you can't always bank on that. Yes, you can stream tight ends and hope you can find the guy that's playing the Cardinals or the Dolphins or whoever it might be every week, but that's not always going to be the case. And so all of a sudden when you throw in this tight end premium scoring into the mix and you have guys like George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Zach Ertz, these guys that are getting 75, 80, 95, even 100 catches, and all of a sudden you're doubling that total. It's essentially like these guys have between 150 and 200 catches, and all of a sudden there's this argument to be made really hard for these guys to be going in the first, second round. And it's a whole different element of strategy to be pitting a guy like George Kittle up against like a Chris Godwin. And, I've already faced that sort of decision in a tight end premium league, and it's kind of split 50-50. It's really hard. It's enticing when you have a guy that has the ceiling of like a Kittle or an Ertz, and their point total is doubled just because they're a tight end.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, like you said, if you're put in that situation, let's face it, you're probably going to take Kittle. I don't know what you did in that scenario, but Kittle, it's very close. And I think that's, the point of this is it's close, and it's a lot closer than it would be, if it wasn't like, if it was just a regular kind of league or a regular PPR league.
Right. And I think it's a little bit different in redraft specifically. You need a year out of these guys. So when you have kind of these older tight ends, it also can provide value for guys like Jared Cook, who, maybe they only have a year left, but in redraft, that's all you need is that year.
Right.
So, and a suggestion that got thrown out to me this past week on Twitter, or it was posed out to just Twitter in general, was a playoff format that I found really, really interesting. And it was, from weeks 1 through 13, you have your traditional kind of head-to-head style league. And then once the playoffs hit, you got 4 playoff teams. And weeks 14, 15, and 16, it then becomes like a guillotine-style league, and where the person that has the least amount of points is eliminated every week. And I thought that was an awesome way to do that, because I've been in these playoff leagues where, I'll win, especially if it's like a 2-week playoff scenario, I'll win that first week and then lose that second week but nowhere throughout the playoffs would I have been, kind of the odd man out unless maybe it was the last week. So I think that's a really interesting, captivating way to just say, hey, from here on out, whoever scores the most points, go get it.
And you know what? Another really good idea, because how many times, it's happened to me, it's happened to everybody. You draft you have a great year, and then one week, the guy you're playing in week 14 of the playoffs puts up like 200 points, and you're just screwed. And aside from him doing that, you would have beaten the two other teams.
Right.
The
second highest score, and all of a sudden you're out after all your success throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, and to me, it kind of makes sure, because of course, listen, when you play fantasy football, we know there's a luck aspect, but there's a lot of skill and there's a lot of following football that goes into it every year, as we know. So to put in 13, 14 weeks of effort, and to, like you said, to have maybe you scored the second highest amount of points this week, you play the guy that scored the first, well, you're still better than the other two teams.
Right.
So if you could find a way, do like a guillotine exactly like that, to where, okay, I'm fine, I'm still playing another week, and just find some kind of a different way, something like that, so that the best team by the end always wins.
And don't get me wrong, some of these ideas are going to take a little bit of legwork. Not every single platform is going to have this as an option, as a way to set up your league. Now, there's obviously great platforms like Sleeper and My Fantasy League and things like that. I personally don't know if they offer specifically this route once you get to the playoffs, but if it's something you really want to try, literally just say, hey, we're going to keep our own score for these last 4 weeks and just do it yourself. Like, it's totally fine to break loose and be a little innovative and make fantasy football more fun. It's supposed to be more fun, and I think that's where a lot of people, it gets monotonous, and if they're out of the playoffs, they lose interest, and then they come back the next season, they start 0-3 again, and then they're already losing interest. And so I think if you can find ways to keep people more interested for a lengthier amount of time, then that's only better for your redraft leagues moving forward. So talking with Kevin O'Malley of DynastyProsFootball.com. You can follow him over at Twitter. It is TH Philly Special. Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was like that until like a couple of weeks ago. I thought I got the whole word "the" in there, but I guess I didn't. So it's the Philly Special without the E.
Yeah, but that's where you find Kevin O'Malley. Obviously, find his Dynasty content over at DynastyProsFootball.com as well. We're talking about ways to make your redraft league a little bit more spicy, make things better, keep people's interest up throughout the year. And again, the formats tend to get stale after a while. People just kind of fall into the routine of what the league is going to be. And so I like leagues that aren't necessarily the depth of Dynasty. Obviously, in redraft, you want to have those the waiver pool with the ability to keep that a little bit more fresh. But I think it's also good to have more starters every week so that people have a few more decisions to make, both in the season and in the draft, and you can't just necessarily, kind of put it on autopilot after round 10 or after round 11, whatever it may be. If you have more guys starting, you got to pay attention longer, and the deeper your draft should go. So people really got to focus in, again, from the onset, the precipice of your draft.
Yeah, so again, I'm gonna go ahead and get on board with this. Listen, like, we try to put out a lot of fantasy football content every year. We're always following it. We're always trying to stay up to date. And like you said, how many times where you get to the 9th round, whether you're doing a family draft or you're playing for money, whatever it is, and literally people just start out auto pick after round 10.
Yeah,
it's like I think there should be some kind of reward for knowing, all right, I gotta go get a Mims of the Jets. I gotta go find a wide receiver who, a lot of people might not know about, but he's going to get a lot of targets, or, just whatever the case may be. I always think in life, and, try to keep it in fantasy football too, like, more knowledge should be more success. So if you know 20 rounds worth of fantasy players and everybody else knows 10, if you're playing in a league where you're only starting 8 or 9 guys per week, it doesn't really matter. But like you said, if you up it to a quarterback, maybe 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers, a couple of flex spots, well, yeah, now you have to know you have to be more knowledgeable.
Right, and it almost never fails. And this is where you can really get a leg up on your redraft league. Obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a little bit ahead of your casual fans, your redraft league to begin with. But so many times when you're in a draft, familiarity and ADP tend to dictate people's choices a little bit. So if you look at wide receiver ADP in PPR leagues right now, you have guys clumped in there like Marvin Jones, Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk, and Jerry Jeudy. And some people are just going to lean towards Marvin Jones just because they've had Marvin Jones last year. They remember having the success of those big games with Marvin Jones. And that's all great and well, and maybe Marvin Jones pans out more this year. But when you look at the upside of guys like Deontay Johnson and what he started to do last year, and you figure he's got Big Ben coming back, and you know the name Deontay Johnson, that's where you can separate yourself a little bit from the rest of the pack in your redraft league. So you got to know those deep dives in redraft too to be able to get the leg up there. Even in your home leagues, you never know what people are going to do with the draft board. So always have a pivot and a way to turn. And, if you got more starters and you know these deep guys, you're going to have much more success. Now, an idea that I love and that I've participated in a couple of times throughout the years is to have a draft based on the draft order based on a different event. So like a NASCAR race or like a golf tournament or a horse race or something like that. You all draw names, numbers, jockeys, whatever the case may be. Obviously a little bit harder to do that this year with COVID-19 going on, a lot fewer events happening. So it's probably pretty difficult to get this idea going. But hopefully next season, we'll have more events, more things. We always used to do, like, I think it was the Masters or the U.S. Open. You would draw names, and whatever golfer you got, that determined when you could base or when you could pick your draft slot. So just adding a little element like that at the beginning of the draft, having some skin in the game before the thing even gets going, I think gets people paying attention.
So it's actually, again, on board with this. I did this for the first time 2 years ago. All my college neighborhood, college friends, all that. We do a league every year. And we all went mini golfing before it. And I'm a really bad mini golfer. But, it was fun. It was a great time. I came in dead last. Ended up with like the 7th or 8th pick. But it really did. It made it more fun. And like you said, I think it made you care a little bit more before it even started. And if you can get yourself into a league where everybody is, everybody wants in, everybody wants to win, everybody's caring just that much more, it's definitely a fun, more competitive way to start the season than just picking names out of a hat or logging into ESPN or whatever it is, and it gives you something. So yeah, anything to make it a little bit more fun, I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to do that. And unfortunately, the redraft league that I'm in every year, we're also spread out. It's really difficult to get together for mini golf. I've wanted to do a go-kart race forever. I think that would just be a blast
that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, just to determine the draft order. I love go-kart racing, so I think that would be fun. But obviously, yeah, if you got people that are all in your area, go-kart race, mini golf, beer chugging, whatever you want to do, man. Just get some action in, and it helps build the community too, because there's nothing harder, in my opinion, than being in a redraft league where you don't know anybody, where you don't have that camaraderie, you don't have that communication. It's so much harder during the season if you want to, kind of will and deal for trades, and you're kind of going in cold.
Yeah, and it's funny. So after, we did the whole mini golfing thing 2 years ago, and we're all still in the same league now, so we're all, we all know each other a lot better. But that year, so we had started doing the league the year before that, and it was like no trades, like you said. It really does correlate to trading, swapping picks. It's just, side bets, just things that, it makes it, well, one, it makes it easier to win because, if you draft a great team, you have trade pieces, but nobody really wants to trade.
Right.
It doesn't matter. So, like you said, it builds the camaraderie. It makes it a little bit more fun. You're getting closer with everybody. So yeah, I think it's a great idea, and it really is something that everybody can do it. Because like you said, even if you're not all together, me, I live around a lot of these people. But, even if you guys live in different states, you can do a NASCAR race,
Right.
horse race, just something. Everybody gets a number, and then that's how you do it. That would be great.
Everybody's on Zoom now anyway, so you might as well throw in a golf tournament, and I mean, do it that way. I know it's weird with COVID, and maybe you're not going to be in contact anyway, but just find something to do all together. And kind of along those lines, I didn't even have this in the show prep here, but I think it's really important to always have a line of communication with everybody in your league. And a good way to do that is whether it's GroupMe or whatever, WhatsApp, I think, is another good messaging service where leagues set up in, or Slack, or whatever the case may be. But having that line of communication, so many people don't check in redraft leagues. I'm telling you all now, people do not check until like Sunday morning to make sure that they have their guys plugged in to their starting lineup. And a lot of times you've sent a trade offer, and by then it's too late. And so often you just have to have the right expectations of what people are going to be doing. And if you have that line of communication in some form of app, you got a lot better chance of being able to communicate with people, being able to get these trade talks and stuff going. Otherwise, people are likely to just click ignore, or they never counter offer anything. And so it's good always to have that line of communication, because I know for myself, I don't have everybody's phone number. People probably don't want to give me their phone number as much as I try to trade. So set something up like a WhatsApp, a Slack, or whatnot. Have that communication open. And the other thing that we talked about a little bit is having side bets throughout the season. You've got buddies in this league, you've got spouses, you've got other family. Make a side bet of some sort. I've had to wear horrendous jerseys or horrendous shirts or make dinners or whatever the case may be. These little side bets that you have competing with your spouse or your family or your buddies, I mean, it starts to put a little bit more on the line. It doesn't have to be something extravagant. It doesn't have to be something crazy, but it can just be like, hey man, next time we meet up, loser owes a beer, something like that.
Yeah, and like for us, like I'm from Philly, as you can tell by everything. So here, like, there's nothing that we hate more than the Cowboys.
Yeah.
So last year, the guy who came in last had to strut around Center City on a really busy night with a bunch of Cowboys gear on, and he wasn't allowed to tell anybody that he actually hated the team. He just had to act it out.
That's the best.
And it was really funny, because it was right before it was from the loser from the previous year, so we made him do it last year around Christmas time. Center City, Philadelphia, there's tons of people, and it was the week before the Eagles-Cowboys game for the division.
Of course it was.
And he just, he just had to take it, and it was all night. It was constant all night. People were yelling at him. Like, it was great. It was hilarious. So yeah, just anything, like you said, it doesn't have to be a lot of money or something crazy. Just something like small to put a little bit on the line.
Yeah, and I think it just keeps people interested on a week-to-week basis, and that's really that more than anything is really, you just need the participation. That if you have all the participation, that's really what's going to make your home league and your redraft leagues better. We had a buddy a couple of years ago that he was a huge Chiefs fan, and his wife was a Broncos fan, and I can't remember if this was pre-Mahomes or not. But anyway, the Broncos ended up winning the game in Denver, and we had a party a couple of weeks later, and there was some sort of phrase that, like, anytime it got brought up, he had to say, "How about those Broncos?" And to your point, he couldn't tell anybody why he was saying it, and we all knew he was a Chiefs fan. We're like, what the hell is going on with him right now? We eventually found out he had to pay out on that bet. So it was a good night, and again, it's a good way to keep people going on that week-to-week basis. So kind of the final tip that we have here is having the right expectations for your league. And this is the thing that I struggle with personally the most with this home redraft league that I'm in. I'm the guy that always wants to trade. I'm trying to trade before opening kickoff and that sort of thing before the season ever starts. And there's certain people in my redraft league that they're not going to make a trade the whole season. They're not going to respond to your trades, and it frustrates the heck out of me. There's not much I can do about it, but I've gotten to a place where that's just my expectation, man. And if you have the right expectations and you know what people kind of are going to do or aren't going to do or what they're game for, it's going to make your life on a week-to-week basis, a little bit easier. You're not going to be trying to trade at, 10 o'clock the night before or something like that. Just knowing what people are game for, I think that makes your life easier throughout the course of the season.
I think it definitely does. So it was kind of the same thing for me when I started playing like more seriously, some bigger money leagues a couple of years ago. I was in one, and it wasn't like a really expensive league, and people just didn't care. So like to your point, I'm trying to make all these moves, I'm trying to trade, I'm trying to do this and that, and it was just nothing, like no responses from anybody. So I do like just tamper your expectations for, like you said, the kind of league that you're in. If you're in kind of a more family-friendly league, or maybe one where there's really, some people might not have a reason to keep caring after they start to lose a couple of games. Just like you said, tamper your expectations, because, with anything in life, your expectations are going to kind of control how you feel about a certain situation.
Right.
So, don't build it all up and think it's going to be so much fun if, there might be a chance that it might not. So, and I guess to that point, too, try to join a league for what you're looking for.
Exactly.
So, if you're somebody who's listening to this and you have, and you listen, a lot about football, you want to get out there, well, if you can afford it, maybe try to find a bigger money league or a league where people are going to care for whatever reason. There's not going to be any giving up. So, just find a league that fits what you're looking for to make it, as much fun as possible.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in these family-friendly leagues, or these leagues where it's $20 at the beginning of the season, or $50 at the beginning of the season, $20 and $50, generally speaking, isn't enough to keep people invested long term. For kind of the time that you have to spend to the ratio of what you're getting back. So to your point, find a league where people are as competitive as you are. There's places. Twitter is a rabbit hole for fantasy football to find anything and everything that you want, whether it's Dynasty, whether it's people that trade all the time, whether it's 2 QB or 8 teams, or, I'm not going to knock any sort of league. I think you join fantasy football mostly to have fun. Obviously, it's great to win, too. And if there still happens to be a lovely cash prize at the end of the league, then all the better, man.
Right, yeah, that is the goal for a lot of people who play, so definitely.
All right, well, that is going to pretty well wrap it up for us. We hope that you are able to implement some of these ideas into your league and get breathe some fresh air into your redraft leagues. Take some of these ideas, pose them now. We still got like a month to go before the season. Try to implement these things now. Don't try to give people all this info 2 days before the draft. I promise you it's not going to go well. I've tried to do it. It doesn't work. Try to tell them now. Try to get their wheels turning while there is still time left before the season. Again, you can follow Kevin over at The Pick, or excuse me, that's us. That's the whole show. The Pick is in FFP over on Twitter. You can follow Kevin over at The Philly Special, minus the E and the, over on the Twitter machine. We're both over there writing, producing some awesome content. Our whole team, honestly, is kicking ass over at DynastyProsFootball.com. We'll see you next time.